All right, I know we've had quite a few people join um, as the uh, as we had met folks into the room. So just to reiterate what we started with, we have some documents available to support your processing. You can use the links in the chat as well as the links currently on your screen to access those. You can make a copy of it, download it, print it. If you prefer to process things in kind of a non-digital way, you're welcome to just grab some paper and use that. So please, as you are getting set up, get those ready and let us know if you have any questions in the chat.
Let's go ahead and get started. My name is Brittany Dillman, and I am so excited to have you all here with us. I recognize some names and faces from our last session, and am excited about some new names and faces as well. On this intro slide, I'm on the far left. I have short, sort of all over the place brown hair, depending on the humidity. I use she, her pronouns, and I am our Director of Graduate Certificate Programs. In the middle of our picture and in one of your Zoom boxes is my dear colleague, Candace Robertson, who also uses she, her pronouns. She has a long, dark, curly hair, which is currently up in a power bun. I think we call those. I'm deciding is powerful. And she is our assistant director of the MALXD program. And on the far right side of that picture is my other dear colleague, Liz Owens-Boltz, who is also in the Zoom screen. Liz has red hair and bangs currently and not in that picture. And she wears glasses like Candace does. And Liz is our director of MALXD and also uses she, her pronouns. If you would like to, we would love to have you share some intro information in our chat so we can start building our impromptu learning community. And we will just enjoy seeing what information comes through the chat in the next moment. Thank you. Feel free to continue to drop some intro information into the chat if you would like. There's no pressure to do so. And today we want to help you get more creative with generative AI. And we are going to use a three-part series where we're going to talk about your own personal creative self, your creativity in your learners, and sparking, which is one of our favorite activities or phenomenon to experience. We have some shared goals for this time together. We want to help describe and differentiate how we design in creative ways and how we develop creativity in our learners. We want to apply creative frameworks and strategies in your own personal context. And we want to generate ideas for designing or redesigning learning experiences. Specifically in this space, we want to talk about the fact that we believe creativity is very important, and there are also major ethical implications for using generative AI. We're going to play around and muck around, and it's not going to be perfect, and that is great. And we're only going to be able to scratch the surface of these ideas. We invite you to participate so others can too. So if you are chatting a lot and then want to not chat a bit, or if you haven't chatted, we'd love to invite you to do so. And please make sure that you are sharing what is yours to share. So stories of other people's personal experiences would not be a good thing to share. And the three of us, Brittany, Liz, and Candace, are merely your guides for today. We hope that we can guide you along, but we know that you are the experts in your areas. In order to set the stage for your creativity, we want to give you permission to be present. We want to give you permission to close your email and your work chats and move your phone away or turn things on to do not disturb. Whatever you can to be able to be as fully present in this space, we give you permission for that. And Liz, I'm going to let you take that mindfulness moment.
All right. So one of the sort of grounding practices that we like to use in our programs, is called a mindfulness moment. So I'm just going to ask you to take a moment, close your eyes, and imagine this. Creativity is a bright, pulsing light. It's starting at your feet and traveling up your body. Your hands glow as the light reaches them. It travels up your arms, and your heart illuminates and sends a huge, huge surge of light up to your head. Light then emits from your ears and surrounds you. Take a deep breath in and feel the glow of creativity within you and surrounding you.
Thanks, Liz. Now we're going to continue illuminating ourselves by developing our creative self. So, as designers, we can think about designing with creativity, and that's our personal creativity and creative process, and designing for creativity. And that's for building creative capacity in our learners. So we will begin by discovering opportunities to develop our personal creativity in ourselves as creatives. And there are a lot of different approaches to improving personal creativity, and we're going to look at three key ways to do this. So, the first way we'd like to talk about is the neuroscience of creativity. So, we can think about our brain as having a default mode network. This generates our spontaneous thoughts, and our executive control network. And this takes care of everything else, all the other processes we do. So there's no one area of our brain that's responsible for creative thought. There's many interacting processes by large scale brain networks that work together to have creative thought. So we can think about this as the balance between that default mode and the executive control network as like an internalized balance between convergent and divergent thinking. And so maybe you've heard those terms. And convergent thinking is kind of this standard, logical, singular, correct answer type of thinking. And divergent thinking really is focused on generating multiple solutions or ideas for problems. And it's often this like spontaneous, free flowing manner that it emerges in. So that's kind of how this default and executive and convergent and divergent thinking come together through multiple networks to allow us to have creative thought. In these networks in our brains, they bend what we see, they break what we expect, and they blend things with other things. And then there are research-based practices for building creativity. And there are is some variety among different lists that you'll see online. We really like this one. And we've provided some examples for you within these that you can come back to for creative exercise in the future. So we really like this because it also leans into that neuroscience of this interplay between the convergent and divergent thinking and building capacity for that divergent thought and building capacity in our default mode and the connection between the default mode and that executive control. So, first, we can play and find problems. These can be simple things, right? Think about when you're designing a learning experience, you are finding problems all over the place and solving them. And creativity really, really is just solutions to problems that we're finding. So we can practice by playing and finding new problems. We can also be on the lookout for opportunities and unexpected connections. So when we're somewhere and it makes us think about something else, or oftentimes we're brainstorming and Liz and Brittany and I love to make stuff and we love to make stuff in very different ways, each of us as individuals. And sometimes Brittany will be sharing something as a part of a brainstorm and Liz will have a totally other random thought that is an unexpected connection back to that idea. And we honor that idea when it comes and we share that and express it. Changing your perspective. So, thinking about how your learners are interacting with the content, how maybe an artifact that you are designing for would think about, right? So, we might be thinking about numerators and denominators. Take that perspective of the denominator, and how might it interpret the actions of the sequences that it's going through, and then practicing our creative skills. So we're going to check that off today already because you used some of these skills and that visualization skill of creativity in our mindfulness moment today. And there's a link there for you to explore other quick activities that you can do with your learners to support the practice of their creativity skills. And then just daring to create. And I say just, but it's a big thing because we have to allow ourselves time to play and make stuff that's wrong and make stuff that bites, right? Like it's just not good. And that's great because we learn so much and we learn about the features and we learn about the process through making things. And so taking the time and just being willing to make something really lends to building our creative capacity. And then the third way that we can look at and approach creativity is through a book called Sparks of Genius. And the book is on the screen and it has a match with a flame coming from it. And in this book, it focuses on 13 thinking tools of the world's most creative people. So we have from scientists to artists to musicians to historians, and it covers their creative process and these 13 key tools that kind of come out of how these individuals think and approach their disciplinary knowledge. So these tools allow us to have methods for connecting and creating more deeply with the content and ideas. And these 13 tools are observing, imaging, abstracting, recognizing patterns, forming patterns, analogizing, empathizing, body thinking, dimensional thinking, modeling, playing, transforming, and synthesizing.
So, the first thinking tool that we're going to talk about is observing. We're going to define that as to become aware of something through the senses. Observation is really becoming aware of something through our senses, and we do recognize that there are many human differences involving the senses. But if we're thinking about our current workspace, we'd ask you to just observe it. So take about 2 minutes and think about, based on the senses that you have available to you, what do you see? What kinds of textures do you feel or observe? What do you smell? What do you taste? Maybe. If you've got maybe a Werther's original nearby that you can grab. What sounds do you hear? Like the wrapper of a Werther's. Okay, sorry, now I'm on a whole candy thing. All right, so let's take about 2 minutes and just think and work in your design notebook or whatever you have available to make some of these observations. What would make
This is Brittany letting you know that you have about 10 seconds left.
Right, this is Candace speaking, and we're going to now try out the tool of analogy or analogizing. So, to analogize is really finding a resemblance between two things that are otherwise unlike based on how they function. So, this might be, the earth is an apple. They both have cores, they both have layers in between. They have, or like a gobstopper or a gumdrop, right? Many layers if we're thinking about a closer analogy for the earth. So this isn't a metaphor or a simile. It's not saying it's like it or similar to. It's saying functionally how they work is the same, even though they're maybe very random or not connected in any way. So what we're going to have you do is create an analogy for your personal definition of creativity. So how I would approach this is I would think, what do I think creativity is? And then how would I create an analogy for that? So what can I compare the function of creativity to? And then you're going to use an AI image generator to create a visual representation of that analogy. So now you'll have 3 minutes in your design notebook to analogize.
And this is Brittany letting you know you have about 10 seconds left.
All right, this is Liz speaking. And for the next tool we'd like to explore, we're going to look at abstraction. So, abstracting is removing the complexity of something to create a simplistic representation that captures the essence of that thing, of that idea, or what have you. Um, and so on this screen, you can see sort of an example from Picasso of a very simplified, sort of a process of simplified drawings of a bull. So your prompt right now is to create an abstraction of creativity. The options that we have are an AI icon generator or something like AutoDraw or the tool of your choice. And we're going to take about 3 minutes for you to explore that idea. So abstraction, an abstraction of creativity.
This is Brittany. You have about 10 more seconds to finish abstracting.
There are so many awesome images rolling in. Thank you so much for sharing and your openness in doing that. Next, we're going to move on to modeling. So, modeling is essentially taking and creating an analogy and abstraction, and combining those in a new dimension. So, we're extracting the elements that are most critical to the structure and function, and we're representing that in a more accessible way. So, we can think about a model as something like maybe pipe cleaners and beads being used to talk about DNA, or we can talk about the solar system as a very common model that we might interact with. So your modeling is going to be to think about your creative process. And if it were a sound effect, what would it sound like? And how would we create a model for that? So you're going to use an AI sound effect generator. You'll describe the sound of your creative process to create a model, a sound model of your creative process. So you'll have 3 minutes to do that.
This is Brittany letting you know you have about 10 seconds. And if that is not sufficient for this particular moment and task, we invite you to finish this at a later point or play with it next week.
This is Liz speaking again. We want to take a moment to process that experience that you just had by responding to these questions with keywords and phrases in your design notebook. So you'll find a space with these prompts under the activity reflection section, and we will share those links in the chat again, just in case there's folks who have joined us recently. But the things to think about are: what were your strengths during that activity? What roadblocks did you experience? And what might this reveal about your creative practice or process? We'll give you 3 minutes to think about and write about that.
And this is Brittany letting you know you have about 10 more seconds.
I'm really enjoying your feedback on the sounds and what it makes you feel. It is really interesting. This is Candace speaking. So now you've experienced creating creatively with generative AI. So we can think about how we bend, break, and blend with these tools. So, on your screen is a graphic that provides some generative AI platforms and some tools that embed generative AI in their features. And they are categorized by AI chatbot, writing code, AI video, design, research, resume creation, and productivity. So, how can we use generative AI as this creativity partner to bend? We can find patterns using generative AI and play with our ideas and role play by prompting generative AI to act as a certain person or role, right? And give us feedback. We can break with generative AI by breaking patterns and finding new twists and problem solving. And we can blend with generative AI by creating totally new patterns and creating totally new ideas and generating artifacts with the support of generative AI. So, here are a few more finely tuned examples within those categories. Um, Liz, if you want to go to the next slide. We can bend with a chatbot by role playing, like I was mentioning. So, here's a prompt that you could take out as we can ask it to act as not a specific learner, right? Because privacy matters and safety matters and all of these beautiful things. So, but we can give it characteristics of some of our learners. We can ask it to be a person from history. We can ask it to be an object, an inanimate object or artifact. And then we can ask it to role play with us to generate a list of how we would approach this learning outcome or things that it notices as role playing that item or person. We can break with a chatbot by doing some word association. So we can ask it to generate a list of words that rhyme with the topic or the concept that we're trying to design for. Then, once that list is produced, we can select 5 words that we're most interested in. Then we can prompt generative AI to find those connections between the rhymed words and the topic. Beautiful, especially if we're not experts in that discipline that we're designing for. And then we can keep playing until we come up with something interesting. And that's that divergent thought happening there. And then we can blend with a video generator, for example. So typically, if you've never used a video generator before, you can upload a script or a brief description. Then you can have the option to swap out images, text, and audio usually. And so by having a draft version done in a video generator, let's say, it gives you ideas that you might not have had about what this concept could be represented as in video form. And then you can work backwards from there to refine it. So, in your design notebook, go ahead and take a minute to jot down some ideas you're having about using generative AI to support your creative thinking and process. And this will be in the generative AI section.
This is Brittany reminding you of your 10-second remaining.
So now we're going to take 2 minutes to have a processing break and think about and share how do you use generative AI to currently support your creative process and workflow? What are strategies or ways you've just had a lot of fun creating with it? Or what are you excited to try? So we'll take 2 minutes. Feel free to engage and share here. Feel free to take a little break if you also need that.
Please wrap up any thoughts in the next 10 seconds or so.
So, I was just about to write my response to that in the chat, but I figured since it's time for me to speak anyway, I'll just share it out loud, which is that I get really excited about the possibilities of generative AI as a creativity partner, but I also have concerns. So that is a nice segue into this here, which is problems, concerns, and considerations with AI. AI has already been shown or alleged to underestimate the health needs of Black patients and making it less likely that people of color will be approved for mortgages. We know that some of the image sets that have been used to teach machine learning systems how recognized people and objects have been shown to include racist slurs and images that have been captured non-consensually. There are data privacy and security concerns. There's a lack of transparency in AI systems, especially in deep learning models. Um, so we think a lot about the things that surround the use of AI and thinking about it and teaching with, about, through, and against it in different ways. So thinking about those ethical values, the societal implications, and how that disproportionately impacts groups that are already marginalized. The concentration of power in terms of the design of AI limits the diversity that is possible to come from it. We have questions of job displacement, um, deep fakes, misinformation within academic spheres. Much of the talk is about academic integrity, cheating, appropriate use of AI. And then there's the environmental use of AI, which is massive and significant. So everything that we just did, working to develop your creativity, you can do for your learners as skill building and as activities and pedagogical strategies. So let's put it into a bigger context about how to develop creativity in your learners.
So, like Liz was saying, everything we just did with you, you can do with your learners in designing your experiences and using analogy to interact with the content and things like this. So, we have a little bit of a notebook that these images are linked to. We took the 13 Sparks tools and kind of converged them down to 7 super thinking tools. And we've outlined and described them, given examples, given activities and exercises to try these with your own learners and in your own designs. So, this is here for you as a resource to use in creating that creative capacity with your learners for you to reference later.
So it's important to know and to let your learners know that creativity is much bigger and can also be way smaller than how we tend to think about it to help increase their identities as creative individuals. Because the research has shown, and we've certainly seen in our work with learners too, that a lot of creativity is about your beliefs about yourself. And folks tend to have very firm, almost fixed beliefs about their own creativity. So, how can we build those creative identities in our learners? So if you think about your context and think about how would things like this help to expand the perspectives of your learners? So mini C, that's the idea that novel and personally meaningful interpretations of experiences, actions, and events. So the learner is studying and comes up with new insights that are meaningful to their own understanding. The little c creativity, which is everyday creativity and problem solving. Problem solving is one of the things Candace mentioned at the very beginning of this session. We do it all the time. So coming up with a solution to a problem that's helpful to you and to other people, creativity. Um, Pro C, which is professional level expertise in a creative area, so accomplished individuals who are artists, musicians, etc. Big C, remarkable creativity that transforms society, so Nobel Prize winners, Mozart, etc. There's many different ways that we can conceptualize creativity, and it doesn't only have to be, the big C listed at the bottom of this.
And then Jeffrey and Woods introduced 4 key features of creative pedagogy. And in that, they say that in order for learners to engage in creative processes, first, learners must have relevance, ownership, control, and there be innovation. So the learning needs need to be relevant to their identities and cultures, which echo the validation of learner identities and knowledge in socially just pedagogies. And there's a person there to represent that. That learners need to have a sense of ownership of knowledge, which is internalized and integrated into their worldviews. And there's an icon of a hand and an arrow coming into it. They need to have control of their learning to support motivation, and motivation is a prerequisite of learner agency. And there's a game controller as an icon to help with that. And then in terms of innovation, they define it as a change that has taken place, a new skill that is mastered, a new insight gained, a new understanding realized, and new meaningful knowledge acquired. And I think this links so well to that little c and that mini c because innovation is not this amazing buzzword, transformative, big idea. It is internalized as important to self. It is a new discovery, new insight for self. And so, so much of this creativity happens in these small internalized ways. And we still need to recognize that as truly innovative for that person and that learner.
So often we say, and you hear it said, that creativity is about thinking outside of the box. So let's think inside of the box for a moment to think about some connections between the models that we've discussed. So inside the box, you have your learners, you, your organization, a goal or a problem, a process, a product. That's the box. And then we have to know our boxes because we need to create within them. So what are the constraints? Those constraints can actually be a catalyst for creativity in some instances and in your problem solving approaches. So if you want to bend the box or change the shape of the box, you have to know what it's made of and where the pressure points are going to be. And if you want to cut a hole in the box, you have to know what tools and strategies you'll need to use to do that. Creativity can be linked to social justice and pedagogy in that different possibilities, perhaps yet unthought of, can be imagined to disrupt and transform mainstream pedagogies, which contribute to the production of inequalities. This link is strengthened if learners are conferred agency to co-transform pedagogical relationships and practices. So this kind of solidifies our beliefs about creativity and about its importance for learners and its importance for social justice. So let's take a minute to process what you just now experienced. By responding to these key questions in your design notebook, this is in the Developing Creativity Reflection. And so the questions that we want to think about are, what ways can you promote learner agency? What challenges are there for you to be able to do that? What are small ways and big ways? So thinking about that, little c, pro c, mini c, all of those types of creativity. What are some small ways and big ways that you can disrupt with creativity? And we'll give you 3 minutes to work on that.
And we're actually going to update that and do 1 minute for a quick reflection.
This is Brittany with your 10-second warning, but very gentle warning.
All right, so now we're going to move to this bigger picture of designing this overall spark. So you'll have an updated 3 minutes to start this spark. So we're going to visit the Designing the Spark section of your notebook. And for this, we want you to think about one topic, big idea, or skill you design for. And now we're going to put in all of the thinking and learning we've done so far together into a creative brainstorming process routine almost. And so you're going to move through the prompts for the creative brainstorming process, and you can use generative AI however you'd like to or wherever you'd like to throughout that process. So we'll go ahead and give you 3 minutes for that to start it, knowing you won't finish it. This is Candace with your 10-second notice to pause. So let's revisit our goals for the day. We have described and differentiated between how we design in creative ways as creative individuals and how we develop our creative capacity of our learners. And we've tried a lot of different things to do both of those. And we've applied creative frameworks and strategies in our context through this Spark plan and through our reflections. And then we've generated ideas for redesigning learning experiences, and we've started that spark. And I hope that you've noticed throughout this that we've given you a lot of intentional time to do this creative work. There are a lot of conceptions around creativity and the time it takes, and with design thinking and rapid ideation and constraints in time and are a part of creative skills, but it is also, as we know, cognitively demanding work. I mean, our whole brain is working to come up with creative processes, creative thoughts. So we need to really be intentional about the time we're giving it, to let it simmer, to let those ideas and those connections happen, and to let those networks of our brain interplay. So thank you for your engagement with that. And we can tell you that 3 minutes of wait time on Zoom feels incredibly long for facilitators, but we know how hard your brains are working in that time. So thank you for all of your engagement and sharing in the chat as well.
And we just want to alert you to some additional resources that may be helpful to you in your creativity learning journey and development journey. And finally, we want to share our contact information with you in case you'd like to get in touch. We love connecting with folks. We love being creative. And if you have feedback, ideas, want to brainstorm things, we would love to hear from you. So with all of that said, thank you so much for being here. We are, once again, Candace, Liz, and Brittany from the Master of Arts and Learning Experience Design program at Michigan State University. And thank you for your time today.